Right now at 10, we are keeping a close eye on a brush fire burning along South Mountain.
That fire sparked within the last couple of hours. Our Zach Perletsky just arrived on scene and joins us live with the very latest. Zach, what can you tell us?
Well, good news, Sarah and Jason. We just got an update from the Phoenix Fire Department a couple of minutes ago. They say that this brush fire that started on South Mountain a couple of hours ago is contained. You can see there are still a couple of hot spots. We have a Firebird circling the area trying to give crews some light as they work to fully put this out. But this brush fire near 32nd Street in Baseline is fully contained to Phoenix Fire, so that is the good news. But we want to show you what it looked like about an hour and a half ago when our crews first got to the scene. And this is really a site that had a lot of people who live in this area concerned, especially when you think about what's going on in California with those brush fires and what they exploded into. But Phoenix Fire Department says this about 1 acre brush fire really never threatened any structures, really never got a chance to get bigger because of the quick actions of firefighters and crews that came to this mountain. So obviously a concerning hour and a half for a lot of people that live in this area with the sight of a brush fire on South Mountain. But the good news tonight, according to the Phoenix Fire Department, this brush fire is totally contained. Investigators are still on the mountain right now trying to determine the cause of what started that brush fire. Obviously, not totally a lot going on right now. You can see just a couple of hot spots, a couple of embers still burning as we're back here live near 32nd Street and Baseline on South Mountain. But the good news tonight, that 1 acre brush fire that started around 8 o'clock, just a couple of hours later, we are being told it is fully contained. No homes or anything were structured, but obviously a very concerning sight for a lot of people who live in this area when we think about what's been going on in LA County. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
Let me take you on a journey to Phoenix, Arizona. Come on. UFOs are among us. South Mountain, where the petroglyphs show evidence that the Indians knew all about this. March 13th, 1997, the UFOs showed their presence. The Phoenix lights, and it was seen by masses. Still people hating, still people doubting. Petroglyphs in the sky. Watch the UFOs fly by. We in the Southwest Arizona. Sonoran Desert, UFOs are among us. Petroglyphs in the sky. Watch them UFOs fly by. We in the Southwest Arizona. UFOs are among us.
Hello, welcome back to another Phoenix Lights, Petroglyphs in the Sky UFO show. How's everyone doing tonight? So glad you guys are here. My name is Jeff Woolwine, and we're gonna get right into it. So I just found out that there was a fire up there on South Mountain not too long ago. And so I just realized that this was the spot on where I was filming the very first recordings since the Hohokam Indians of these UAP jellyfish sightings that we call them now. I first discovered these things back in 2005, and this was the area on where I was filming these jellyfish, these UFOs. So I had to go out there and make sure the petroglyphs were okay and make sure the landscape was okay. And so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to bring you along on a tour through this sacred area. We're going to talk about the petroglyphs. We're going to show some UFO sightings that occurred in that area. And so I hope you enjoy the show. It's going to be very informative. And let's get started. Okay, we're going to start off at the base of this canyon here, of this area. And the first thing that we come across is this panel here. And this panel was used in the UFO Hunter show in the episode called Arizona Lights. And let's go ahead and just examine this panel here for a minute. So here it looks like what we now call our barbell UFOs. And it's interesting too because it does resemble a tic tac. what ufologists likes to refer to as Tic Tac UFOs or Tic Tac UAPs. Okay, and it has this line that's coming down through the middle of them. All right, those of you who have been watching my past shows understand what that line is all about. Now we have this coyote. Let's really study this panel here. We have this coyote, and he's sniffing, right? He's sniffing this Tic Tac, this barbell, right? So that's telling us that this barbell UAP is on the ground, close enough to where that coyote is checking it out. Because that's what dogs do. They come up and they sniff, right? That's what the artist is putting in here. This is what he saw. These are prehistoric photographs of what the Native Americans saw back in their time. They didn't have video cameras to record sightings. They had these stone boulders. And they carved their sightings in the places where the events took place at. This is the reason why sometimes we find petroglyphs over there, but we find no petroglyphs on the other side over there. Because nothing happened there. Where the petroglyphs are is the place where the sighting took place at. Especially when it comes to like when there's petroglyphs high up on cliffs. Because you have to look up. You have to look up to see his art, to see what he said. And what is he telling us? He's telling us that he saw this thing in the sky. So what better yet to explain to future generations on what he's trying to say is that to carve it in the sky. So he climbs high up on that cliff, high up on that mountain, and he carves it in the sky. So when we look up and we see that, he's telling us, I saw that in the sky, whether it's a jellyfish or a serpent or a tic tac or a light or an orb. He's going to try to carve it in the sky. If there's nothing there to carve it in the sky, then he carves it on the ground on the place under, right? Because he saw it above, he saw it here. So I'm going to carve it here. I saw it here. And we're gonna really talk about that here as we venture on. And here's a barbell here. Now look, it's over the coyote, right? So it's flying. This barbell is in the sky. This barbell is on the ground because the coyote's sniffing it. This barbell is in the sky because he's over the coyote. Move it along to this here. These symbols here. This is the symbol for energy. This is the source. This is the key. This is the reason why these jellyfish, these UFOs, these UAPs visit South Mountain and other sacred places around the globe on where natural energy is formed at, is created at. South Mountain was created by a fault line. The spirals that we see on these sacred mountains are symbols for doorways. When the spirals go clockwise, it's a doorway in. When the spiral goes counterclockwise, it's a doorway out. And the doorway in, sometimes it ends at the crack of that stone. And the Native Americans tell us that crack is the emergence point into the underworld. But on a scientific analysis, they're going down into that energy. They're going down into that fault line. When the spiral ends up, they tell us that there's a vortex in the sky. That's when these things just magically appear in the sky. They're coming through that doorway, that energy source there. There's energy in the sky there, and they're coming in to absorb that energy. You know, it looks like they're coming through a door, but what if they're coming in so fast, right? That it appears that they're coming through a doorway, right? They're coming in through that spiral doorway up there, right? And that's what the spirals represent. It's like looking down into a tunnel, down into a hole, right? But again, the scientific analysis of it all, it has everything to do with the energy and the fault line. This is the reason why there's a power plant on the east side of South Mountain on Ray Road in Phoenix, Arizona, because that power plant is bored down into that fault line for its energy. In 2004, I discovered this on how these Phoenix lights would hover right over that power plant. They would absorb that energy, disappear, and more would come in. This is how I learned on the energy source. It was all a learning experience for me. Nobody taught me this. I learned from my observation, my exploring, common sense, things like that. I took a lot of many years into this research. And that's why I'm here today to try to explain on the stuff that I've learned, all right, and that I succeeded at on how to see these jellyfish, when and where to see them. And I'm passing this information on to you. And so when we come on to these symbols here, that's telling us that this is an energy place. This is an energy source. Now we have some stick figure guys here, right? And they're dancing. They're in the appeasement pose. They're happy because their spirits are here. Now let's look at this here. So when we look at the petroglyphs, we have to look at the whole landscape, all right? And when we look behind this hill, behind this place on where it's carved at, you're going to see two peaks, two mountain hills with a valley. And when we look at this line here, look at this. See this? Look at the energy, okay? Look at the energy that those hills are making. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. Let's look behind this hill now. There it is. So it's talking about these two peaks here. This peak here and this peak here. And this valley down and through here. And we're going to take a venture up and through this area here. And we're going to explain what's there and the meanings. We're going to walk through this area here. Now the fire, thank goodness, was up here. The fire was all along this ridge here. So it never went down into the sacred area where the petroglyphs are, thank goodness. Because when I was watching it on the news, I was like, oh my goodness, I knew exactly what was on fire. I knew that this was a sacred and a holy place. And I had to go out there to make sure that these petroglyphs was okay. And because this is where the very first jellyfish UAP sightings were documented since the Hohokam Indians. That's what all these petroglyph carvings are. They're jellyfish. They're jellyfish UAPs, the UFO UAPs, whatever you want to call them. They're UFOs. They're UAPs. They're strange things that we see in the sky. And it's carved all over this hill, all over these hills here. And we're going to go take a look. We're going to venture out into that. And we're going to talk about all the sacred areas that's out there and their meanings. All right. And so I was very happy that the fire was only up along this ridge here, and that this area was secure. This area was okay. When we come and we look back on the other side of this panel here, where the barbells were, or that the barbells were carved here and those things are there, we find this panel here. And my wife is standing there with our dog Ruby. And let me go ahead and just back out of this for a minute. And we can see on how there's a guy there and he's dancing, okay? And then we have a coyote, all right? Look at this coyote here, right? And look at the direction on where he's pointed at, okay? He's looking this way, all right? And this is how we understand the petroglyphs, is the directions on where these things are facing at, all right? So if we see a coyote facing this way, there's his two ears, there's his snout there and his belly there, there's his tail. So we know he's going this way, right? So we want to walk that way, right? He's pointing to the next story. So let's go ahead and go to the next story. On the other side here, where the coyote is pointing, he's pointing to this area here. Now, this is an awesome rock because this is facing west, all right? And when the sunset gleams on that rock, holy cow, when it's like a red sunset, this panel just comes alive, man. It's a beautiful panel of colors. Of the sunset colors, and whether it's pink or red, it's just beautiful. And these petroglyphs really stand out. All right, and so let's talk about it here. Look at this here. See all this squiggly line here? Okay, that is a UFO. That is a jellyfish UAP. See that squiggly line there? This is what he saw in the sky. And this is energy, right? There's an energy. There's an orb. And again, some more energy, right? And look at the crack here. Okay, so the cracks have a lot to do with understanding what's on the panel, because the artist is putting the cracks sometimes in with the art. And we're going to go over that as we venture on. All right, so this is an energy symbol. This is the very first panel that we see before we enter this sacred site. And I tell you what, the sunset, man, just really makes this thing glow. Now, when we look at this here, look at this. This is on the to the left, and we find this bow tie symbol, and it's again a UFO. I've seen this in the sky many times. I've filmed this in the sky many times. And we have more energy symbols here, right? There's the crack, there's the emergence point, right? And then we have this symbol here, right? And so the archaeologist likes to call these things anthropomorphs, all right, because he's changing shape, right? But look what he's doing. He kind of looks like a Tic Tac UFO, right? But he's half dog. He's half coyote, but he's also half Tic Tac. He's anthropomorphing, right? And it looks like the Tic Tac UFO. Now, this is filmed. I filmed this on South Mountain looking east, and this thing is heading west to the area where we are standing at now. I'm going to reference that a lot in this film. And so he's heading to the place where we're standing at now, where those petroglyphs are of the anthropomorph Tic Tac coyote. Okay, and it's the exact same type of Tic Tac that we see carved where we're standing at, and he's heading right towards there. He's coming east to west. Phoenix is in the background there. This is on South Mountain. And he's heading right to that area where that petroglyph is carved at. Isn't that amazing? Let's venture up. Let's keep going. So, as we come deeper into this sacred area, we come across this panel here, this coyote. Now, look where he's looking at again. Okay, see how he's looking? Where is he looking at? He's looking over here. So let's take a look at what he's looking at. He is looking at the sacred area. See? He's right here looking at the sacred area. The fire is up here. You can kind of see on how the charred marks, all that right there, that's all from the fire. All that dark area, that was from the fire. But he's telling us he's looking into this area here. This is where we're heading at. He's telling us, go that way, because that's where I'm pointing at. He's waiting. He's watching for these UAPs also. He's watching for these UFOs also. He's pointing in the direction where we need to go, the sacred area. He's also watching. And I want you to concentrate on this area here. Let's take a look at that there. This area here. Let's look at this area here. This is this area here. And on March 9th, 2005, this thing left from that area. Look at this thing. And watch how it changes shape. It's anthropomorphing. It's changing shape. Let's watch this thing together. Isn't that amazing? This thing left that area where we're standing at now in the direction where the coyote is looking. And he's now moving. He's going up over that area now. And he's coming closer. I am about a mile away. My window where I'm watching these things at on the east side on the sacred area is about a mile away, give or take. And so those things are coming and going from right there. Look how it's shape-shifting. He's anthropomorphing. This hasn't been filmed or documented since the Hohokam Indians over 1,000 years ago. Isn't that amazing? And that was right up here in that area there. Let's stop this video real quick. Okay. And that was right in here. So that UAP left over here in this canyon right over here. We'll talk about that later as we venture up into the sacred area. But right here is where I filmed that thing leaving South Mountain. And we're now looking at this hill. You want to see a jellyfish? You want to see a fish? It came out of this canyon here. It came out of this canyon here. Look at this hill here. Now watch this, ladies and gentlemen. Here's this hill again. Here's the hill right there. All right? You want to see some jellyfish? Look at this. I saw these things come up out of the mountain. My video camera takes about 3 seconds to warm up. 1, 2, 3. By the time it started recording, it had left the mountain. I caught what I could of the mountain. And these things are moving upwards. Look at that thing. It even seems to have fins. We're talking about jellyfish now, people. Oh my goodness. Here it is. And this is in 2005. No, excuse me, 2006. Now there's others above him there. Right? So he's following these other UAPs that's above him in the sky. Look how he's going up. This is 2006. Look at that. Did you see that white one? That white one just passed right above its head. That white orb just flew right over that jellyfish UAP. Look how it's climbing higher in the sky. Now, there's another one over here. You're going to see that here in a minute. This thing is following these others that are right above him. I concentrated on this one because he was like just crazy. So I wanted to film this guy as much as I could. And lo and behold, I had no idea what was going to happen next. And we can see it. He's gotten a little higher now. And then there's an orb. There's a white orb there. Now let's watch what this jellyfish UAP does to this white orb. Let's see what happens. This has never been filmed before. This has never been documented before since the Hohokam Indians here in Phoenix, Arizona. Look how he's getting closer. Look how he's getting closer to that orb. Now he backs away, right? Look how he's moving away from that orb now. Is this incredible? This is what's going on in Phoenix, Arizona. This was in 2006. So, I mean, we're talking 2025 now. So who knows what the activity is like now? You know, somebody needs to get out there and start watching these things, man, because they're here. They've been here. Look how this thing is just moving along. Is that incredible or what? That is something. These are the first documented jellyfish UAPs. And I started my research in 2004. Went on to 2005 when I first discovered the jellyfish. And I continued to film them ever since. Look at it now. And now the white one's trying to move away from the jellyfish. See? The white one's moving away now. Is that incredible? Now, let's take a look at this sighting here. Let's look at this. So we are standing about right here. We're standing here. Okay, this is where we're at. Right about in this area here. And this is the area that we're investigating. All this area here. Okay? The fire was up there. And then now we're here. Now look at this here. Look what came out of that canyon there. The canyon to the right over here. We're gonna take a look at that canyon as we get closer. This is the reason why I feel that this spot is so sacred and holy, is because the Hohokam Indians saw and recorded these things flying over that canyon and coming and going from the canyons there, from the fault lines there on that side of the mountain, and they're back. They're continuing to do it, and it came right in that area where we're standing at now, right in that canyon. I'm going to show you that canyon as we get closer. But let's take a look at this thing. Look how this thing is changing shape. Right? This is not a normal UFO. This is the reason why, you know, when I was doing the UFO Hunter show in 2007, they were telling me that, you know, the public isn't ready for this yet. You know, I had to wait over 20 years for the public to just now start seeing these jellyfish to understand what I've been talking about all these years. You know, so now I feel safely and confident more, you know, because now everyone else is seeing them. And so, you know, I want to bring this to your attention, and this is what I was researching back in 2004, 5, 6, and 7, and continue to this day. You know, we still see them today. Look at that thing. Look at that thing. And there's the coyote there, and he's looking. Stop. Right here. Right? That's the canyon. That's the place where we just got done seeing that UAP come out of. That jellyfish was right in that area there. Okay, as we venture off, venture off into, we're going to go up on the side of the hill here. We're going to keep going. And when we get to this panel here, this is amazing. Right? We find these petroglyphs here. This is very significant. This was one of the panels that I was really worried about because of the fire, because this holds a lot of sacred information, and we're going to go over that right now. But look at this here. I wanted to show you something real quick. Now you see all that rubble there? Let me just fade out of here just for a minute. See all that rubble there? So someone has come in and destroyed all of this. This right here is what's left of this panel, right? So we're only left with this panel here. So who knows what else this is talking about, right? And it's probably telling us that there's things in that canyon behind us. And this is the reason why they destroyed it, is because when someone like me comes around and understands these petroglyphs, can understand what this panel is talking about. So it's probably telling us that this is where something sacred is buried in that place that we're headed to now, because this is what this panel is talking about. This is a light and shadow place. Okay, let's stop this for a minute. This is a light and shadow marker. So during the equinox and the solstice, the sun will cast a shadow, right, on this top of the rock here, and also over here, right? This has been all chiseled out perfectly to cast a shadow on this panel here and also over here, right? This is very significant, right? And all this debris has been blown up. It's been chiseled away, right? Because it's telling us a story that they're trying to cover up. They don't want us to know that. That's why it's blown up. So when we get closer, we see this panel here. All right. Now let's start off with this. Do you see these lines here? That is the canyons that we are headed to right now. Right? That is the canyons that are in this direction here. It's this way. Right? The panel is talking about this direction here where we're heading. Right? But it's facing west, or excuse me, east. Right? So the sun, when the morning summer solstice, or when the morning summer solstice and equinox arise up here in the east, it'll cast its shadow here, right, to make the magic, right? But these cracks here are actually the canyons that are in the valley that we are headed to now, which is this way, right? So let's take a look at this, right? See how this is all shaved off here, right? And when I was there, I was surprised because we can see the magic here. It's starting to take shape. And we can see what looks like an Indian profile face, right? And this is his headdress. This is his feathers. And then we have a stick figure man who has a staff. And then we have this arrow here. And then we have this sun. Right? The sun comes up this way because we're looking east. The sun will arise here. And just like what it's doing now, see the shadow? See how it's working its magic there already, and it's not even the equinox. So this is amazing. So I think, the spirits are telling me that everything is okay, that things are still going on. Now, let's take a look at this magic. Let's see what really happens here. So, we can see the Indians put in his staff, the stick figure guy put in his staff into the light. Look how he's cutting into the light there. This is when the magic is just starting to happen. He's dipping his staff into the beam of light. So this is September 22nd of 2005. This is when I filmed this. And now we can get a better look. There's the Indian's nose and his mouth there. There's his eye there. There's his broad nose. And the headdress, right? There's the headdress. We can clearly see that now. And the stick figure guy, he's entering the light now. First, it was just a light beam cutting this way, and he's sticking his staff in the light. Now, as time progresses, the light now is going into the man. The man now has his leg into the light there. He's stepping into the light. And when it's all done, it reveals a secret. So here's the profile. Here's the guy. He's floating in the light now. And we can see the canyons on the mountain, on the side of the mountain. And now look at this hill, right? This hill has magically appeared with the light. And the arrow is piercing this hill, this light hill. Here's the canyon. There's the sun, right? This is the secret. So it's telling us there's something buried in this hill. And this is the reason why the rest of it is destroyed, is because that is more map on the details on what's actually buried there in the direction on where we're heading. We're going this way. After we look at this panel, we're going to head that way. And so this panel is talking about this direction here because of the canyons. And look at the arrow. It's piercing the light. The man is now floating in the light while the Indian profile, the leader with his headdress, is watching. Isn't that amazing? This happens every year. September 22nd. Isn't that amazing? And here again, here we can see it again there. We can see the Indian, the guys floating in the light there, the canyons, right? And then the arrow is piercing in between these canyons, right? And that's when the light comes up and the arrow pierces the light hill in between these two canyons, right? In between these two areas here, right? It's just amazing. It's just amazing on what's going on there. And what has been there for over 1,000 years, at least. This has been going on. This happens every year. Now, when we come over here, let's take a look at this. This is significant also. Okay? Let's put a pause on this. Now, let's examine this here. So we have this area here where the rock is coming out of the face, right? So this will cast a shadow, right? Now, every time I see this symbol here, it's telling me that this is a sun marker. This is a light and shadow panel. Every time we see this type of symbol, this type of lizard guy, if you will, he's telling us that this is a light and shadow panel, all right? And look at this guy here, the stick figure guy. He's holding an orb, right? And then the sun is like right there. You can see the rays coming up over this orb, over this light orb, this UFO orb. And the stick figure guy is holding this orb. Now the crack, see that crack there? And these cracks here. So the cracks of the stone are the emergence points to the underworld, or to the energy source, to the fault lines. Let's go ahead and play this, see what happens. Okay, so because we're not here during the equinox or a solstice, the shadow is off. Clearly we can see the shadow is off. We can see the shadow, right? And it's coming from this chipped out area here, because the sun will come up behind this rock, cast its shadow, and create this this shadow like pyramid, arrow, if you will, this point. But normally it'll come up through here, right? The shadow will start here at this crack here and travel all along this crack there until it disappears, until the shadow disappears into the upper crack. Here we go. There's the line there. Okay? And here's the doorways to the underworld. And so the shadow will start here and travel up this crack and disappear into the stone there. This happens every equinox and solstice. And it's telling us that these are the emergence points. These are the areas on where to see these jellyfish, these UFOs. They come out of these places. You know, when I first started, researching in this, and when I was being taught about the petroglyphs, the true ways, from a Native American who worked at one of the Indian museums in downtown Phoenix, he was telling me that the cracks are the doorways. And so, I'm still thinking spaceships technology, and I'm like, dude, how can a spaceship craft get into a crack like that? Because that's what we've been led to believe all these years. Now, don't get me wrong. I have seen some things in the sky that could resemble a craft technology. I've seen a flying triangle. I've seen flying jacks in the sky. All right? That could be categorized as a craft. But I think what the majority of the people are seeing now, and have been seeing for a very long time now, with these orbs here, they're not crafts. This is not technology. There's no one inside of this. You see that light there, that orb? That is the being. That is the creature. That's the living being. That's the living creature. You see 5 lights out there? You're looking at 5 living creatures. Not some cloaked ship. Not some spacecraft at all. But 5 living beings. 5 living creatures. And I think that's what the majority of the public is seeing today. This is what we can prove, right? This is the stuff that we can prove. Not hearsay, because we have evidence tattooed on the rocks here in sacred areas. Okay? We don't have hearsay of crafts carved on rocks. The ones that we do see supposedly are fake. They've been CGI manipulated. All right, but when it comes to stuff like this, this is something different, okay? And they're not from outer space, but from inner space. So I believe that these things have always been with us. This is a new type of species of the earth. This is a new creature, a new life form, a new animal, if you will. Because the oceanographers has been finding new species of life below the ocean. So what's to say this is another new species of life that has always been here, but has been dormant, has been hiding, has been secretly coming in. And that's what they've been doing lately. They've been kind of, they've been sneaking around, trying to not to be seen, but they're here. They've always been here. They're slowly coming out. And this is where the credibility is. Right? This is the 3 points of credibility. 1, we can come out to the rocks, right? And we can see these depictions of what we see in the skies now, these orbs. And then we can read some of these ancient texts, anywhere from 3,000 to 7,000 years ago, that explains about these creatures, these beings. And then the third credibility is we're seeing them for our own eyes. We're seeing them for our own selves, right? This is where the credibility is. This is what we can prove. This is what we can take to a court of law and present our evidence. And that's what I'm doing with this. Is I'm presenting my evidence to you for you to take a look at and to make up your mind by yourself. But there's a lot of evidence here that this is what we're dealing with. And the Native Americans, they were seeing these things too. And they were carving their sightings on these holy mountains, on these sacred mountains, with fault lines, with energy. This is where the credibility stands at. Now, as we venture on, we see this orb here. Now, he wasn't able to carve it in the sky because there's no tall boulders here. So he carved it on the ground on where the event took place at. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Right in this area here. Right in this area here. And look what I filmed in 2006. This came out of that area where we're standing at now. Isn't that amazing? There goes, again, the Tic Tac UFO. So first it was an orb, right? First it was an orb, and then it anthropomorphed into a Tic Tac. Right in this area where we are standing at today. This is where I filmed it at. This is where the credibility lies at. Okay? So, let's venture on. And we're getting closer. We're getting closer there. There was a ridge there. Right? And I love these old Indian trails, man. Because these trails, they'll take us to all these sacred spots. Okay? So we're going to follow this trail. And this is such a sacred place here, and you can really feel, you know, the energy around in this area here. As we venture up, as we're getting closer into this sacred area, we can see on how some of the fire was up there. It's all kind of black. But then we see this area here. Look at that there. That's our destination, folks. That's where we're headed. But first, let's take a look at this panel here. We see an orb. And it's not a spiral because it's not connected together. Spirals are connected together. But this was a single orb, and it wasn't connected together. And again, we're headed to that area there. We're getting closer to these canyons. See that? See the canyons there? There's a trail there. And this is scary too, because this right here, I call this a stage. All right. Now there's a big crack in this. All right. And the only petroglyphs is up on top. And it's got those petroglyphs there. There's the door. This crack here, this is the door, because this boulder here you can't carve on. I mean, this is why there's no petroglyphs here. It's because it's very hard stone, man. And you can tell that it's not a normal type of stone. But they were able to carve petroglyphs up on top. Let's go ahead and take a look at them real quick. Let's get a better idea what they look like. And so let's go over this. So we have a spiral here. Is that a spiral? No, it's not a spiral because look, it's not connected together. We know this is a spiral, right? Because it's looped together. But these are not, right? These are not. So those aren't spirals. This is a spiral here, and it's going down. It's pointing to the stone that we were looking at. Now look at this pitchfork-looking thing. This is a UAP. This is a UFO. And here's another one there. It's like a type of jellyfish, if you will. There's an orb, and and it's got like this tail to it, right? It's like a tadpole, and that's pretty much what we were calling these things back then. When Pat Uskert and myself was up on the mountain when we were filming, when we were doing the pilot for the UFO Hunter Show and Ancient Aliens TV series, we were calling these things tadpoles. And then, then now, since people are starting to see them, they changed the tadpole to jellyfish, which is the same thing. So, but back then, Pat and I from the UFO Hunter Show, we were calling these things tadpoles, right? And here's that pitchfork. So that pitchfork is kind of scary. So I've seen that symbol many times on rocks, and we will talk about that in a later show. But now we're talking about what's carved on top of that huge stone, and that's the reason why that stone to me is kind of scary to me, right? So I didn't get very good vibes. Okay, so we're gonna back off away from the scary stage. I like to call that boulder. Okay, and we're gonna continue onward, and there's a trail that will take you all the way up there. And we're heading to this area here. We're getting closer. There's that canyon. And then the canyon, another canyon is over there. Right there. See? All of this is explained in my book too. So we are heading, right now, we're heading to this panel here. And we're going to talk about this panel. And it's very significant. It's like, it's a map. Okay? Just as some of the antlers on carvings of deers are maps, this is a map telling us where the spirits, the jellyfish, the UFOs, come and go from. So let's examine this for a minute. The deers, look at the deers. They're looking in that canyon over there. This deer is looking at the scary stage over here to the left. And then the trails that the deers are making, the deer's footprints, are actually making the canyon back here. And this anthropomorph is coming up out of this canyon. This is the canyon where that jellyfish UAP came out of, that fish-looking thing. And here we can look. Here we can see on how the footprints are making the canyon. Now look, see, the deers are looking that way in that canyon, and the deers are looking over there to the scary stage. All right. This photograph is in my book here. And it's making the canyons. Let's take a look at that here. We can see on how the footprints are making the hill canyons, so making the hills, for the anthropomorph to come up out of this canyon. You see that there? And what's in that canyon? This petroglyph here. And look at the spiral, and look how it's oriented to that scary stage, right? And the arrow from the light and shadow panel that we just saw, that's the arrow that is pointing at, is this area here. And look at the symbols here. You see that? This is the spot where that black jellyfish came up out of and merged with the white orb and got closer to that white orb. This is the canyon here. And look what we find. We found spirals up in that area there in the canyon. Now, how do we know that this is an anthropomorph? Right? Not just the regular deer floating in the sky. Well, let's take a look at this. So the regular deers, look at their feet, right? See how it's going in the correct direction? But this one's going in the correct direction, but this one isn't. This foot is going in an opposite direction. And he's floating, and we know that deers can't float. So this anthropomorph, jellyfish, UAP, if you want to call it that, whatever, is coming up out of this canyon that we just filmed, except this time he wasn't looking like a deer. He was looking more like a fish or a whale, right? He had the fins, and he went up next to that white orb. Look at that. See the feet? Look how the feet's going in a different direction. Okay, our destination is here, folks. We're going right here. Look at that. Isn't that interesting? Let's go ahead and get closer to it. So when we arrive closer to this panel here, we see petroglyph of men carved there up on top. As we move closer, we can see a spiral, all right? And look at the direction the spiral is going. The spiral is going into this area here, okay? As we get closer, on this side of the wall is all these petroglyphs here. And again, look at this one here. See that? Didn't we see the same symbol on the light and shadow petroglyph just earlier? Didn't we see the same type of symbol? Well, you're right. This is a light and shadow panel, right? During the equinox and the solstice, the sun will cast its shadow on this side of the rock. And look at this guy here. So this guy's holding this staff, and this coyote is here kind of floating in with the coyote. Let's go ahead and play this. This is fascinating. This has never been documented before. The archaeologist hasn't even talked about this in his book or anywhere else. So this has never been documented before. See the deer, right? Now, let's look at this here for a minute. Stop. So look at all this. See how this is all cut away? This is all chiseled out? This is cut on purpose. This is not natural. As a matter of fact, all these stones here, these boulders are not natural. Those boulders were placed there by somebody very big, very powerful. Picked those boulders up and made this little formation here of boulders. Okay, this is not normal. This is not a normal by chance boulder sitting in the middle of this sacred spot. These boulders have been placed here. And you can see, look at that. They've been stacked. You see that? And look how smoothly this side of the rock is for the light and shadow effect. Right, but all this is all rough and cut away and placed here. There are petroglyph carvings, and there's evidence of giants all over South Mountain. And I believe this is one area where somebody very big, very powerful, were picking these boulders up, man. These tonnage stones, man, like we see in Egypt. Someone's picking these things up and placing them here. This is not natural. And all this stuff here, this is all cut out. You can see the sun. The sun will come up here, cast a shadow. And we're going to see that here in a minute. But look how it's all perfectly cut, chiseled away to make the magic happen with the sun and the shadow. And here's what I'm talking about. So let's stop this before it goes further. So on the equinox and solstice, the sun will come this direction and cast a shadow on the side of the rock here, on this panel here, and create another Indian profile face. Isn't that amazing? Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. This happens twice a year. Equinox and the solstice. Look at that. We can see the nose and the mouth, the chin, and look at the broad chest there, right? You can even see an eye there. Here's a little better outline, the shadow of the profile. Now look at all this. Look at that. So the man with the staff, right? He's holding the staff up, and the deer or the coyote is now floating in the light, along with these other deers, along with the sun marker, right? They're all flying in the light now. Isn't that amazing? Let's get a better look. See, look at that. And we can see on how the coyote is entering the light. He'll eventually float up into the light along with the deer. And then look at the sun marker. See, he's hanging on the chin of the Indian profile face there. A man holding the staff. Look at that. And it's cutting. Look at that. Look. Look at this. Look how the shadow cuts right over his staff. See that? His staff is here. And it's cutting right above that. It's so precise, right? Isn't that amazing? I lost my arrow. There it is. So the profile face will magically appear here, right on this area here. And the deer and the light and shadow petroglyph there, the marker, he's floating. And then eventually the coyote will float in the sky. And the sun will cut right across here. So precise every year. Is that amazing? Like I said, the archaeologist hasn't even talked about this, folks. This has never been documented before. And again, look at this is where the magic is. This is how it happens. All this has been cut out and chiseled away, right? Look at this. Okay? Now let's examine this for a minute. Look, all of this, right? Now let's go on the behind. Let's go behind this. This is very important. Look at all the rubble here. You see all this debris? You see that there? They chiseled out, and they kept it in the sacred area, in the sacred spot. So all of this was once in front, and they cut it all out to make the Indian profile face, right? And they didn't just disregard the debris. They kept it in the same area, in the same location. They kept it sacred because it is sacred. That's the reason why it's there. It's because it's sacred, and you're not supposed to move it, right? And you can see as we get closer, you can see how this is one part where they cut out and they chiseled out. You see that? All the shavings is the trash or the debris from them chiseling out the stone to make the profile face. And they didn't disregard it. They just didn't throw it somewhere else. They kept it in the space and put it behind the panel. Isn't it amazing? Now, if you look closer, if you look close enough, you know what you're looking for. You're going to find some of these Native American tools. You're going to find the ancient tools. And how do we know this is a tool? Is because look at the way it's cut. Look at the way it's cut, right? So the archaeologist likes to call these Clovis. This is a Clovis tool. Okay, this is a prehistoric tool, a hunter-gatherer tool, if you want to call it that. All right, and this is where the thumb went. All right, this has all been shaved down. This has been cut, and look at the edges here. Someone has cut and chiseled this stone to make a tool out of it. We find these type of tools all over South Mountain. But you have to know what to look for to spot them. Could this one been one of the ones that carved this panel here? Could be. Could have been. That stone might have done the petroglyph carving there over 1,000 years ago. Isn't that amazing? And the tools are still there. Everything is still there because everything is sacred. And we're still looking, and it's just right adjacent to that petroglyph panel there. There's that canyon again. Man, that's crazy. There's a canyon right over there. Isn't that amazing? All of this is here in this area where these UAPs, these jellyfish, fly over or come and go from the canyons, from the fault lines. That's why this place is so sacred and important. So when we're coming down from the hill, down from the area, we notice this bird-looking type of petroglyph here, right? And it's in like a pyramid, right? It's like in a pyramid, but he's facing that way too, and he's facing this way. When we look above, when we look over it, because you have to look at the whole landscape. Okay, look at this. We're looking at the canyon there, right? And then over here is where we just came from. And then these right here are the canyons. See the feather markings? See those lines? Those are the canyons to the left. In this area, those are those canyons right here. All those marks, all those lines. Right? There's that sacred stone that we just came from right there. There's the canyon. And he's telling us that this is a sacred spot. It's oriented this way. There's where we just came from. There's what the giants have left behind. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that spectacular? Now, so the bird is kind of looking this way also, right? And there are petroglyphs over there. But there was somebody's dog over there, and I couldn't reach it over there, so I stayed away from that area. When you come up to these places, you have to be safe, okay? You have to use common sense, right? This stuff has been there for over 1,000 years, and it's going to continue to be there, hopefully, and for another 1,000 years. As long as we keep this area sacred, no one comes in and marks it up or fire damages it. So we have to be safe. If we can't get to a location one day, we have to come back because we need to be safe, all right? Because you get stuck up there, all right, and something happens, you're done, okay? So I've ran into many, many dangers up on South Mountain, whether it's snakes or coyotes or javelinas or bobcats, okay? I climbed that mountain from one peak to the other all over, and I've put myself in danger. And it's not pretty when that happens. It's very scary, and you can walk up on a coyote or a javelina, and you won't even know it's there until you stumble up right across it. So, when you hear danger, such as dogs barking or anything of that nature, you want to stay away from that area. All right, and that's what I did at this time. I couldn't get to that spot, but this is where that panel is. Okay, but this is what in that direction where the bird's head is pointing at. It's pointing at this petroglyph. Now again, how do we know that it's an anthropomorph and not a regular animal? Because look at the feet. See how the feet are going different directions? Okay, and what is this? A Tic Tac? Is that a Tic Tac UFO there? Right? He's an anthropomorph, right? And look what's above. Okay. The flying serpents, the Quetzalcoatl, the flying snakes, right? A huge Tic Tac, and look, he's kind of carrying a man there. See that? This is what's to the west of this sacred area, this panel here. That's where this head is pointing, is facing at. It's facing that way. And so let's take a look on what I filmed coming from this direction. So let's go ahead and stop this for a minute. So we are standing about here, right? And we just got back from this area up top of there, and now we're standing right about in this area here. And in 2006, from my window, when I was watching these things come and go from this sacred area, this is what I filmed coming from that direction there. Look at this thing. Isn't that amazing? Look how they're not bobbing around like balloons would do. They're going in a straight line. They're changing shape, kind of. All right? They're not bobbing around like balloons do. Okay? It's just passing over our heads now. We're in that sacred area right in here. All right? There was that scary hill right back there. All right? And it's going right over us now and is heading up towards. And watch what it does now. See that? Okay. Now I think we're pretty sure it's not balloons, okay? This was filmed in February of 2006. And watch how this thing changes shape. Just watch this thing for a minute. This thing is anthropomorphing. Look at that. This thing is alive. This is not technology that we're dealing with, folks. Technology, aliens, and crafts from another world, I'm good with that. I'm fine with that. But I think what the majority of the public is seeing, again, are these things in the sky, right? These anthropomorphs, these what now is called jellyfish, right? These flying tadpoles, if you will, these Quetzalcoatl, the flying serpents, okay? This is a different life form. This is a different creature, right? This is what's here. This is what has always been here, right? And now, because of the world, things are escalating in the world. These things are slowly but surely coming out. That's the whole reason why we're seeing them today, is because things are changing in the world, all right? And the Native Americans tell us that every time the world changes, like some tell us we're in the third, we're in the fourth, some say we're in the fifth. Every time the world changes, man needs these things to survive. Man needs these beings as help and guidance. And that's what really led the Hohokams here, is because the story goes when the Hohokams got here, they didn't know how to survive. So these things came up out of the sand world, down from the heavens, and they taught these people how to survive. And in return, they worship these things as gods. This is the reason why we find sacrificing altars on South Mountain. And other things that, just like in the Mayans in Mexico, the same story is what we're having here in Phoenix. I mean, why not? Because back then, Arizona was a part of Mexico. So what's to say that they didn't bring their religion here? I believe that they followed the Phoenix lights to this valley, to this energy spot, to Phoenix, Arizona, to this mountain, and they called it Mount Sapoa, Mountain of Mercy. And now we call it South Mountain. But back then, the Native Americans called it Mount Sapoa, Mountain of Mercy. And it was these beings that actually taught these people how to survive. And I think that could be one reason why we're seeing them now, is because the world is about to change, right? And right now, we don't need them. This is the reason why they're not coming down and landing on the White House lawn and saying, hey, we're here. They're watching, right? They're watchers. They're waiting, right? They don't know when they will be needed yet, but they know soon they will be needed for mankind, for help and guidance again, like it was in previous worlds. Now, this is what the Native Americans teach us, right? So is this true? I don't know. But this is what the carvings are showing us. This is what the petroglyphs, this is what the oral tradition says about these things, okay? And I believe this is one of the reasons why, you know, our government really isn't going to come clean about this stuff. I mean, there's so many out there in the skies now. They have to come and say that there's something. But I really don't think that they're ever going to come to a full disclosure and actually tell them about their history. And their history tells us carved on the mountains of what these things are all about, what they are, who they are. Some of these ancient scrolls that we read, these ancient texts, right, tells us what these things are, okay? And, some are good, some are bad. It's up to us, at that time to distinguish which ones are the good ones and the bad ones, because in some of these texts, we do see these beings helping mankind for the good. And then in other texts and other carvings that we see, they're not so good. So it's going both ways here. We have good ones and we have bad ones that are here. And so that's, this is what my conclusion on. And there's somebody else watching this thing. Now watch, there's somebody else watching these. Now watch, there's an airplane that's going to come up right next. Look at that. See that airplane there? Okay, so these airplanes, yes, ladies and gentlemen, black helicopters are flying around South Mountain too. All right, and so are these airplanes, and they're watching these things. Okay, they're watching them way before. This is in 2006, and they're still continuing to watch these things. All right, so they're monitoring what's going on here. Our people know that these things are here. Right, they've just been keeping this hush hush and a secret for all these years up until now in 2025. When everybody is seeing them, because they have to, they have to come clean and say, well, there's something here because now, military pilots are filming them. I mean, look at the Foo Fighters; those things are flying around back in World War II. All right, so every time mankind seems to fight with each other, when there's like big wars and stuff, that's when these things really start to come out. That's when there's a lot of UFO sightings. And so this could make sense. This could be the reasons why we're seeing a lot of them now. And so let's continue our journey. So there's Phoenix there. And we're coming down off the mountain now. We're headed back home. And there's a good view of Phoenix. And we come across this boulders here, this formation here. And we can see that this is man-made. Look at this. You see how these rocks are stacked? Now, these rocks used to go all the way up, okay? And this was probably maybe a tomb, or maybe it could have been like a smoke shack, a place where they gather their steam and they see the spirits, where they come in and I can't remember the term of it right now. I'm sure someone will make comments in the comment below and tell me what it is, but a sweat lodge, I guess you would call it. So this was probably either a tomb or some place where they would come and there's wild tobacco growing on South Mountain, and it's in my book. And I smoked some of that stuff, and holy cow, man, swarms of sweat, man. I'm telling you, I smoked that tobacco off of South Mountain, and I was just pouring sweat. So it's very possible that they would smoke that tobacco and they would sweat profusely, and they would, their spirits would come to them in visions. So that could be what this used to be. And here we can see the rubble of how someone tore it all down, because these stones were built all the way. They were stacked up on top. Let's go ahead and play this. Here again, we can see this is a better photograph. This is in my book here. And we can see on how the rocks are cut and chiseled or whatever, and they're stacked all along this area here. Here again, look at that there. There's a better example on how they're stacked there. This is looking inside of it. Here again, we can see on how they've been knocked down and how where it used to be at. This is inside of it here. And who knows? Yeah, there could be something buried there. Possible. It could be a tomb. Maybe there was mummies up in here at one time, so that's a possibility too. But it also could have been like a sweat area, for them to see visions of their spirits. So lots of possibilities on this. There is something carved on the wall there. I can't tell if it's a later date carving. It looks like windows, but it's hard to distinguish if it's from the Hohokam area or if it's from, something newer. But look how they're stacked, okay? And then look how they were pushed down. They fell down. The last stop of our tour today, we come across these spirals here and this anthropomorph orb, which looks like it's growing some legs there. And we can clearly see that the spirals are ending up in this direction here, meaning this is the sacred area. This is the spot where these jellyfish, these UAPs, come and go from the canyons that are bored down into the fault lines of the mountain. This is a holy spot. This is a sacred spot. Let's keep this sacred and preserve this for future generations. Let's not go vandalize the petroglyphs or catch them on fire, right? Let's keep this preserved. This is a sacred spot. This is a holy mountain. This is the spot where the very first jellyfish UAP sightings was recorded at in 2005, starting in 2005. The Hohokam Indians, they recorded it before us. But now these things are back, and this is the very first area where the jellyfish was recorded at in Phoenix, Arizona on South Mountain. I hope you've enjoyed our tour today, and we will see you next time.
Let me take you on a journey to Phoenix, Arizona. Come on. UFOs are among us. South Mountain, where the petroglyphs show evidence that the Indians knew all about this. March 13th, 1997, the UFOs showed their presence, the Phoenix lights, and it was seen by masses. Still people hating, still people doubting. Vortex is letting out lights day and night. I wonder what's happening on the walls, what they write. When the light shines just at the right time, you can see snakes devour the heads of mankind. Petroglyphs in the sky, watch them UFOs fly by. We in the southwest Arizona, Sonoran Desert, UFOs are among us. Petroglyphs in the sky, watch them UFOs fly by. We in the southwest Arizona, UFOs are among us.
Reflecting back on history, I'm from Arizona, so you know I spit heat. There used to be some Indians running around here with some pens, marking on the walls. And now, it's a new cause. They say it has something to do with UFOs, y'all.
All these UFOs gotta say something about the petroglyphs being all the truth, all the ancient myths of spirits in the sky. Maybe these were starships, Indians wonder why. In the future, when times get rough, we'll all return to the mountain to get the answers to the question of humanity. All these ships, cure insanity. Petroglyphs in the sky, watch them UFOs fly by. We in the southwest Arizona, Sonoran Desert, UFOs are among us. Petroglyphs in the sky, watch them UFOs fly by. We in the southwest Arizona, UFOs are among us.